3. We're reacting to week 4 of NFL action on RotoViz Radio.
What's up, RotoViz?
Welcome into the RotoViz Fantasy Football Show. I'm Dave Caban alongside Curtis Patrick. We're two of the owners here at RotoViz. I actually had to pause for a second while I was saying that to check if we really were already reacting to week 4, but it's actually here. I was at the Patriots-Buccaneers game last night, Curtis, still trying to regroup from that last second doink off the post. So it was quite a time, but how are you doing?
Wow, that's incredible. I don't think I actually knew you were there, but man, that's a special moment for Patriots fans. Did you find yourself rooting more for Coach Bill, or were you feeling nostalgic for Brady there?
I didn't have too much of a feeling either way. Like, obviously I wanted the Patriots to win, but I'm kind of the opinion that this season I don't see the team making the playoffs. So it's probably a more useful win for Brady. It would have been kind of fun to have him come back to town and light things up. But once the game kicked off, and like you're actually in the stadium and your home team's playing, it was pretty much all Patriots for me from there on out. I think most people felt the same way.
Yeah, I can see that. Wow. Well, that's a special game to go to, and to witness Brady pass Drew Brees as the all-time leading passer in NFL history. That's pretty special, man. So congrats to you on getting to witness some history. I did not get to watch any football yet yesterday. Thank goodness for my Game Pass sub. So I'll start catching up over the next day or two. My son, I did have a proud dad moment though. So my son,
oh nice,
on Saturday and Sunday, they had a travel soccer invitational this weekend, and the mini moon puncher Kellen, the 10-year-old, 6 goals, including the deciding penalty kick after double overtime in the title game.
Whoa.
So definitely a proud dad moment there. So a good weekend. Up until about 9 a.m. Sunday morning, and then a big dose of reality in the healthcare gig after that. But yeah, man, I can't wait to talk about our 3 AFC teams, 3 NFC teams. Our player of the week, our snoozer of the week. I'm really loving this format. So let's get down to business.
All right, let's do it. All right, Curtis, that puts it on you to lead us off with the player of the week. There's a couple of possibilities here. One of them I had planned on talking about later. So I had a backup plan because I thought the possibility was high that you might be mentioning this. So who do you have?
I have a strong feeling you're going to need your backup plan because we have to ceremoniously recognize this player. He's been, really like on a per touch basis and just like excitement factor basis, one of the most exciting players in NFL history, certainly one of the best kick returners in NFL history. All of a sudden, he's a fantasy bludgeon. You just hate to see this player in your opponent's lineup. He strikes fear into the hearts of fantasy managers everywhere. It's Cordero Patterson, man, 3 touchdowns, 6 targets, 5 receptions, 82 yards, 3 touchdowns receiving. And then he added at nearly a 6 yards a carry clip, 34 rushing yards, 34.6 PPR from the the career bit role player. It is just, it's a revelation, man. And it is really cool to see. I don't think this could have happened in the NFL 20 years ago, maybe not even 10 years ago, except in very special hands. But the Falcons' putrid backfield and underperforming receiving core has created this perfect set of circumstances for Cordero Patterson to emerge. So congrats. He is the player of the week.
Yeah, it's so fun to see how this plays out when you have these versatile players like Patterson that can do so many things, getting an opportunity. And it also really reinforces what we've been talking about for years now in PPR with how important it is that you have these pass catching running backs and how good they can be. Because right now, in terms of PPR per game, I believe that Patterson ranks 2 among running backs on just 7 rushing attempts per game, which really tells you all that you need to know about how valuable touches are.
Oh, man, I feel like there's definitely some marketing opportunity in there. What a great pull there, Dave.
Yes. All right. So that brings us to the snoozer of the week, Curtis. This one's tough for me because it's a player that I have talked about a lot. Juju Smith-Schuster went just 2 of 8 for 11 yards. We've already talked about him this year in a negative light. Feels like this is something that's been happening a frequent amount. I do want to point out that he did see 95 air yards, but on the year, he's averaging just 8.5 points, 3.8 receptions per game, and 32 yards with 0 touchdowns. Not what you want to see. And there's going to be a lot of finger pointing going on in Pittsburgh when you have the results that the team has had so far, outplayed by Green Bay pretty substantially over the weekend. Roethlisberger's bottom quartile in completion percentage of passers with more than 15 attempts per game. Only Drew Lock, Andy Dalton, Davis Mills, and Jacoby Brissett have lower yards per attempt. Roethlisberger's tied for 25th in touchdowns with just 1 per game. So no matter where you want to assign blame here, this just isn't good for Juju. It's not good for Ben. It's not good for Chase Claypool. Perhaps could not be good for Deontay Johnson as well. Curtis, I think that we co-manage a couple of teams that have Juju on them. How concerned are you?
Oh, I'm super concerned. And the unfortunate thing is like the Steelers' offense is still one that could support a blow-up game from any of the receivers in any week, even with Ben's limited skill set. And the problem is when that happens, Juju's going to be on our bench. It's already happened to us once this year, and it's bound to happen again. I mean, he's just entered, like he's now a boom bust wide receiver 5 or something, right? I mean, his weekly opportunity does not support usage except for multiple bye week coverage as long as you drafted a decent team, or multiple injury coverage. So yeah, I'm very concerned from a 2021 redraft perspective. And I'm also very concerned from a dynasty perspective. I mean, Juju has, he's had an elite start to his career. Even with a little bit of the noise the last season and a half, it's still a player that, you're hoping maybe by the time he gets a second contract, second team, maybe we see like a Robert Woods type thing where better situation, he has more sustainable role. I'm pretty concerned, man, just about the player overall. So I don't think he's a player you can even move in dynasty. And if you could, I mean, it'd be at dimes on the dollar for sure. So you may be one of the foremost Juju fans. I mean, like, how worried are you?
I mean, I'm really worried. I knew that this was going to be a tough matchup with Green Bay. In the cornerback wide receiver matchup, I actually recommended that if you had other options, you go elsewhere. But now I'm beginning to think that this might be the type of recommendation I have to make for the overwhelming majority of opponents that they have. Because lots of times you can have a passing attack that's talented enough that it can offset bad matchups. Couldn't say that this weekend, and I think that's a testament to how far down this team has come in that arena. And then for Juju, it's hard now to overlook the number of bad weeks, potentially looking like this could be a bad season for him and him failing to meet expectations. So I do think that the name brand that Juju had developed for himself in fantasy is starting to become substantially tarnished.
Yeah, hopefully his Fortnite career is still going strong.
Oh boy. All right. On that note, let's make our way over to some game notes. Let's start in the NFC. I want to talk about San Francisco. Now, earlier in the morning, or earlier today in the morning, it looked like there was talk that Jimmy Garoppolo had suffered a calf injury. He could be out for a couple of weeks, which made it look pretty clear that the shift to Trey Lance was already underway. The last report I read today made it seem that they had overreacted and it wasn't really clear how long he might be out. But I did want to talk about San Francisco, even with the cloud there as to who the passer will be, because I just wanted to point out how much this offense has flown through Deebo Samuel. We saw another ridiculous outing from him over the weekend, a 2-touchdown game. On the year, he's averaging 10.5 targets for 7 receptions, 122 yards per game, Curtis, 0.8 receiving touchdowns, 23.5 per game. That puts him well ahead of the rest of the team in targets per game. You have George Kittle at 7.2, then Brandon Ayuk at 3.7. So this offense is really going through Deebo. And the thing I did look at here, I tried to quickly make my way through the Game Pass when Trey Lance came in the second half of the game. I'm including a 2-point attempt here and a play that was called back via penalty, but I was looking at targets. I had Samuel as seeing 7 targets, 3 going to George Kittle. All 3 were incomplete. Just 1 to Brandon Ayuk, 4 to Mohamed Sanu, 2 to Juszczyk, and 1 to Sherfield. So it's looking like even with the change, we could still see this offense going through Deebo. I do want to point out, though, that though things have been down for Kittle, he's still seeing pretty good volume for tight end. So hopefully we could see him start to string together some good games. But I really think the major takeaway here is just how insane Deebo has been, and that it looks like it should continue. And I think it will, regardless of who is playing quarterback for San Francisco.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. Deebo, man, he's scoring at a Tyreek Hill level clip. I mean, he is on the very short list of first quarter fantasy MVPs for sure. Huge value. Would expect that many Deebo Samuel teams in best ball are toward the top of their standings right now. With the quarterback thing, yeah, it's just kind of tough, you know. If Jimmy G is healthy, I mean, were the offense playing at such a level that the 49ers could really look themselves in the mirror and say, with Jimmy G maybe not making turnovers and is, you know, which he actually does, what's the problems like the veteran you would expect to protect the ball, but you know, he still does make the turnovers. We really look in the mirror and we think we can compete with Seattle, the Rams, and the Cardinals. I just don't see it. So you might as well go for the haymaker and go to the rookie and see if you can get a rookie season Cam Newton level bump there. You know, he averaged last week, averaged 1.5 yards greater per attempt. And, you know, he didn't take the starters reps, you know, going into the game. I think the downfield game could potentially be a lot stronger with Lance's arm and, you know, moving around outside the pocket. Of course, you know, Shanahan with the prior success with, you know, RG3 early in his career and having a designed run basis for the quarterback. Trey Sermon looking a little bit better in this game. So maybe the 49ers could kind of reinvent themselves on the fly and give opposing defenses something else to worry about. But, you know, man, I think the big story there in San Francisco from a fantasy perspective certainly is Deebo Samuel. And I would propose that we simply start referring to this other player as Brandon Ayuk, because I really don't think it's happening. I mean, he's like in the doghouse, inside the doghouse right now. It's just really not happening, Dave.
Yeah. And the strange thing is, well, I guess I shouldn't say the strange thing here, but it's interesting because both of these wide receivers had kind of been pegged as guys that could be real interesting options. But I think given how strong we saw Ayuk last year, a lot of people were thinking it was going to be him. And it's almost like the excitement that people would have had for the two of them has just all been absorbed into Deebo. So just super exciting outlook for him from a dynasty perspective. Maybe that's something we'll talk about this season, because obviously his stock has gone up tremendously. But we got to keep things moving here. A lot to get through. So why don't you take me through some notes that you had from an AFC game, Curtis?
Yeah, let's talk about my Brownies. The one game I've had a chance to talk or to watch a little bit of. I actually was able to watch the final play, and that's it in terms of watching it live. But I have had a chance to observe some trends. And in the Sands Jarvis Landry version of the Cleveland Browns offense in 2021. So we basically, just as a reminder, made a switch of injured Landry for healthy OBJ. A really troubling trend for early round running back drafters has developed. And Kareem Hunt during that time period has also been, has usurped Nick Chubb as the foremost fantasy scorer, once again. So kind of what we saw middle of the year last year, Kareem Hunt taking over as the RB1 in Chubb's absence. We're now kind of seeing him still get like all of those really high value fantasy opportunities. And Chubb is just basically an early down pounder. Over the last 2 weeks, Kareem Hunt averaging 22.1 PPR, Nick Chubb just 9.9. Only seeing, only one target in the last 2 weeks for Nick Chubb, 11 targets for Kareem Hunt over the same period. And he also has the rushing touchdown, and Nick Chubb does not have one. So Kareem Hunt, once again, looking like the better backfield value in Cleveland. And I would expect, that the team will continue to lean into that until they're at full health on the perimeter. I'm assuming, I haven't seen the visuals, but from the stat line, it looks like Baker had a very difficult day against Minnesota, completing less than half of his passes. I have read, some of the commentary around, Odell Beckham Jr. looking pretty frustrated in that game after being overthrown badly a few times. And it shows up in the stats for sure. 144 air yards, just 27 receiving yards, caught just 2 of 7 targets. So the Browns offense definitely one being driven by the backfield workhorses right now. If you're a Kareem Hunt owner, you're very encouraged. If you're a Nick Chubb owner, you're not so encouraged. So, from a dynasty perspective as well, just to put that spin on it because I can, it's a little troubling for Nick Chubb. He's in that iffy age range now, age 25 already somehow. It's like you blink and it just happens, with no receiving role to speak of. And not being, an end zone hammer for this team right now. They're just not scoring enough points overall as a squad. He's just kind of like there's no excitement here. And I think that really devalues him. If you are a contender, really depending on Chubb, I think you have to ask yourself, at the end of the year, am I going to be happy holding him, knowing that the team continues to like what they have in Kareem Hunt, knowing that the team has started to give Demetric Felton some of those other receiving opportunities as well. All I kind of see is a downward trajectory for Chubb at this point. He's not going to get those targets like even somebody like Derrick Henry has gotten, and he's not owning the rushing attempts at a level that somebody like Derrick Henry from that same vein has gotten. So what do you really have here? It's definitely concerning from a fantasy perspective. From a Browns fan perspective, love having both of these guys standing behind Baker.
No team can afford to overpay for talent. Build a championship team with Indeed the smart way by only paying for quality candidates that meet your must-have requirements. Get started right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. When hiring gets hard, you need Indeed, the job site that makes hiring incredibly simple. Just attract, interview, and hire. In fact, with Indeed, you can do all of your hiring in one place, even interviewing. Get a $75 credit at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Indeed knows how important it is to make the most of your recruiting hours and dollars. With Indeed, you can save time and money by setting your must-have qualifications and only paying for the quality candidates that meet them. Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Offer valid through October 31st. Terms and conditions apply.
Slow is just right if you're on vacation, a sloth, or describing QuickBooks. More like slow books. It sucks you in and slows you down with manual processes, integration difficulties, and glitchy delays that leave you scrambling for the numbers you need. Now is the time to make the switch to NetSuite by Oracle, the #1 financial system, because NetSuite gives you visibility and control of your financials, inventory, HR, e-commerce, and more. It's everything you need to grow, all in one place. With NetSuite, you can automate your processes and close your books in no time, no matter how big your business grows. Failing to switch to NetSuite will leave you stuck trying to make sense of your books while your competitors sprint ahead. 93% of surveyed businesses increased visibility and control since switching to NetSuite. And right now, special financing is back. NetSuite is offering a one-of-a-kind financial program only for those ready to switch today. Head to netsuite.com/bluewire right now. Get special financing at netsuite.com/bluewire. One more time, netsuite.com/bluewire.
Yeah, and to your point, regardless of the context in which a running back normally finds himself, we've already seen, like you said, Chubb in the league now for a number of years. You're already naturally starting to trend down. And then you have the situation you mentioned. And the other thing that's really interesting is Chubb has always performed very well in the advanced stats, like yards after contact, broken tackle percentages, all of that stuff. This season, and Kareem Hunt's been good too, but this year in particular, you actually have Hunt matching Chubb stride for stride in yards before contact, actually now beating him in yards after contact, which was always one of the big selling points for Chubb. Hunt also has a top 7 evasion percentage and is beating Chubb in those other metrics. So as good as Chubb has been, you have Kareem Hunt playing some really good ball, which certainly does not help out. So it's interesting to see what will happen as that backfield plays out. But always exciting you have a team with 2 really good running backs that are usable for fantasy purposes. And that brings me to a team that I wanted to talk about here from the NFC, going to Green Bay, where you had an exciting game for a lot of fans of RotoViz or people that draft some of the guys that we've liked. AJ Dillon was a name now that people have been waiting on for a couple of years. We've seen flashes here and there. Now, of course, in this game against Pittsburgh, it might have been one that was more inclined to give both backs a go. We actually saw Aaron Jones rush 15 times, AJ Dillon rush 15 times. Average 5.4 yards per clip Dillon did, 81 yards on his 15 attempts. Also saw 1 target. So Aaron Jones only draws 3 more opportunities, a little more valuable as he did get 4 targets. But I thought that this was pretty exciting to see AJ Dillon start to get worked in. Obviously, in the past, we saw games where Jamal Williams was able to accrue fantasy points, sometimes outscoring Jones, sometimes both players having good days. So I thought this was pretty encouraging, Curtis, to see Dillon getting worked in here. Hopefully, this is something that can carry forward.
Yeah, and he even got a target. I mean, good for the young man there. He even got a target, and he did manage to corral it in, 16 receiving yards there. So, yeah, 10.9 PPR for Aaron Jones in the game, 10.7 for AJ Dillon. So, really going stride for stride there. The Steelers clearly had a game plan of trying to limit what Devontae Adams could do. That really seems to be what they're geared toward. They're pretty successful in that. Caught just over 50% of his targets and, really was not an explosive game. Anytime you see Randall Cobb in the year 2021 posting multiple touchdowns and a higher YPR than Devontae Adams, you know that the other team was just happy to let that happen. And so, I think, very smartly, Green Bay taking a little bit of a different strategy here. And the Steelers didn't seem to want anything to do with tackling, Dillon based off of this rushing efficiency that we saw out of the bigger back versus typically more slippery Aaron Jones.
Yeah, the other note that I had from this too was we saw Robert Tonyan only record two receptions, but he did see 7 targets. Also saw 83 air yards, which was the same amount that Adams saw. Now, like you said, there was really an emphasis on taking Adams out of the game, but I don't think that we're always going to see Randall Cobb being the recipient of the 2 touchdowns. So Tonyan, it's kind of a hard spot for him right now. I would say, though, what we saw from him last year wasn't always this consistent rhythm of getting 5 receptions every game. There was definitely an element of needing to get some touchdowns. So I think that if I'm somebody with him on my team, I'm still not like completely panicked. I'm just recognizing that, just because it looked at points like he might become a permanent fixture you could count on every week, that's something that is fairly rare for tight ends. So I think that's probably what we're going to see carrying forward there.
Yeah, just on Big Bob there. I mean, he is averaging just shy of 4 Aaron Rodgers targets per game. And so, when you get into the muddled mess beyond the top handful of tight ends that you feel good about, those are still really high value targets. And so it is encouraging to see him get a little bit bigger piece of the pie. And, not every team can do this, obviously. Not every team has TJ Watt and, some other horses like that to kind of control and limit opposing quarterbacks. But, other defenses are watching what the Steelers did to limit Devontae Adams and say, hey, let's try to play a tighter game with Green Bay. So I think this naturally transitions into the next team that I would like to talk about and the type of game that Tunyon could have coming in a week here very soon. We got to talk about one of your favorite offseason guys here.
Yes.
Dave. It's Dawson Knox week in Buffalo, man. Good for you, Dawson. 8 targets, caught 5 balls, 2 touchdowns, just 37 receiving yards, but 2 touchdowns. This is a Tunyon-esque receiving line if I've ever seen one. This is exactly what Tunyon did in 2020. And it's proof that, chasing, tertiary and quaternary targets and these high-powered offenses, is a good way to still find, upside for your fantasy lineup. And I actually did pick up Dawson Knox from the waiver wire heap and start him this week in my ESPN Kings Classic League. Really competitive league. It's actually a 14-team league. And so getting a big game like that out of Dawson Knox can be the deciding factor. So was really excited to see that. Of course, it occurred in a 40-0 just drubbing of the Houston Texans. We're not going to see that every week. But for him to even have a chance to kind of get his cake, I think was, really encouraging. We also saw, another solid outing from Stephon Diggs, 7 catches, 114 yards. So it was nice to see that kind of emergence. Just 128 air yards on 10 targets. It's a decent number, but still you would like to see that downfield connection with Diggs happen soon. I think his week is coming. He continues to be a focal point of the offense. Allen and Diggs just haven't been on the same page on those, really deep targets. He's got a Tyreek Hill level game coming soon. You're going to see the 180-yard, 2 receiving touchdown game for Diggs any week now. You can write it down. It's definitely going to happen. And then the Buffalo Bills backfield, we see yet another instance of Zach Moss, out producing from a fantasy perspective. Devin Singletary, they did split the rushing attempts in this one, right down the middle, and Singletary more efficient on a per carry basis, but Moss gets the carry for the touchdown, and that's the entire difference there. So this backfield continues to be pretty difficult to project. You might feel good about streaming either guy as a flex level player. Not sure I would trust either one as an RB2 unless I had to, but I think the lean goes to Moss at this juncture, with neither one really being a huge target getter and Moss seeming to be the preferred option down close to the goal line.
Yes. Well, obviously I love the notes on Dawson Knox. I will say I'm a little disappointed though, because I am in a matchup with Pete Overzet this week, and I had Logan Thomas going. Unfortunately, he got hurt the 0 points. So I have those 20 Dawson Knox points on my bench, and I would have loved to have had those in the lineup. Would have just about guaranteed a victory.
I don't have the whole stat line committed to memory yet, but if my box score visualization recall is accurate, did Thomas even get a target?
Well, I feel like I didn't even see a target very early on. Got hurt very early on. Yeah, so he finishes with the big old goose egg, which is not what we like to see.
Oh, my goodness.
However, though, I did in that league, and I know nobody cares about listening to comments on fantasy teams. I'm just using this for transitional purposes.
Oh, I do, Dave. I do.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. Somebody has to, because my wife sure isn't as interested in my teams as I am. James Conner, though, puts up 20.6 points for me, which brings me into the Arizona Cardinals. I want to talk about them. And there's been so much focus on the passing for them in the preseason. Obviously, they have some names. They're exciting young guys. But boy, these running backs have been exciting as well as a usable duo in fantasy. I don't have anything too actionable here other than it's just exciting to see that at this point, the breakdown has been Chase Edmonds, 11 rushing attempts, James Conner, 13. Now, James Conner has been scoring touchdowns at an aggressive clip, but Edmonds is getting 5.5 targets per game, which has evened things out. He's actually at 14.9 points per game. James Conner is at 11.7. And I think with the way Arizona has been playing, we're reaching a point where you actually can think about leaving these guys in your lineup each week and feel pretty decent about it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I started James Conner in multiple FFPC Football Players Championship squads this week. Was very happy about that production. It's very cool because both of these guys look like they could end up paying off at their relative ADPs from the summer. It was a little bit divisive. It's kind of like you had this contingent of people that were like, "Hey, we're Chase Edmonds fans. We like the athleticism. He's finally going to get his chance." James Conner's busted. Kyler Murray is a big time running quarterback. There's not enough meat on the bone here for three rushing producers. But Conner basically has the Kenyon Drake role, and he's basically doing Kenyon Drake level things with it. If he's going to continue to score the rushing touchdowns, I wouldn't feel as good about starting him in a given week as Chase Edmonds.
Yep.
But so long as the Cardinals aren't facing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers front seven. Other than that, you would feel pretty good about his chances to give you double digit, PPR, just because he's going to get those carries inside the 5. With Chase Edmonds, he really looks like he's trending towards being, maybe a mid RB2. If those targets continue like that, he doesn't even really need the touchdowns to go with it. To produce for you in the PPR format anyway. So yeah, I really like that. I think that it is actionable to say you can trust both of these guys at least in your flex spot each week, Dave.
Yeah, well, just the final note: these fast-paced offenses that are when they target running backs, it just gives them that great opportunity. So yeah, hopefully that is actionable now that you mention it. But I feel that you might have one more nugget for me back in AFC territory.
Yeah, I do. I want to go back to the Chiefs. It's hard not to, because I feel like we're seeing a little bit something different from Kansas City each week. But they had so many, pivotal players there that figured to be important in 2021 that it's important to observe what's going on. So, the first thing is, perhaps seeing Darrell Williams get, 10 rushing attempts and a rushing touchdown, as well as a couple targets. Maybe you're a little worried. Nobody was starting Darrell Williams. But then when you see Clyde Edwards-Helaire over 7 yards a carry, a triple-digit rushing performance, and also adds a receiving touchdown, this is obviously is not a game that we're going to see from Kansas City every week. The Eagles were able to score enough to kind of force them to continue to produce. But it is very, I'm sure, soothing for Clyde Edwards-Helaire drafters to see this type of performance after for the second week in a row, looking like a fantasy player that maybe you can trust now. And then what can you say? What can you say that hasn't already been said about Tyreek Hill? 163 air yards, 13.6 air yards to target, caught 11 passes for 186 yards and 3 touchdowns, a 47.6 PPR explosion. He probably should have been the player of the week in the segment at the top of the pod. But I had to give it to CPAT there. But this is like when Michael Jordan didn't win the MVP every year in the mid to late 90s, and you just wanted to see a different name. That's kind of what I did there. Tyreek Hill. Just bravo. I made the argument this summer that, he is still the dynasty wide receiver 1. For the last 2 years, I've been saying, I think he's probably going to have like a Julio Jones plus type, fantasy production curve and fantasy value decline, which means we should still see a couple more true alpha seasons from Hill, tied to Mahomes, tied to Andy Reid, provided that he can stay healthy, God willing. And you're starting to see maybe some signs that Kelsey is the complement to Hill. And I felt like even as recently as last year that it was still the opposite way. But Tyreek Hill seems to be like the true key to the offense in 2021. And just that simple passing of the baton unlocks upside, as we're seeing now, that we haven't even seen, to this point in his career. So I think we could potentially be looking at like a legendary season out of Hill.
Wow. Well, that certainly seems possible. It's interesting to think about what that curve is going to look like for Hill once he starts to taper off. Because one thing that people will normally talk about is the athletic receivers. Well, once they lose a step, what do they look like? The thing is, Tyreek Hill is so fast that he might be able to lose a step or two and still go stride for stride with a lot of cornerbacks, right? In a good situation. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. We had kind of written off Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He started to come back to life a little bit. So that's going to be an interesting one to track. I did like the notes, though, on the Chiefs there. Before we close down, I'm going to share a couple of obvious waiver wire names that people should have added by now. If you want to go deeper, go check out the tremendous article on RotoViz that comes out from Sam Wallace every Monday, where he lists a million deep names that always tend to pay off. So Kenny Gainwell has been doing impressive things, inserting himself into that Eagles offense. Jeremy McNichols has been picking up points for Tennessee. And then obviously Dalton Schultz with the 2-touchdown game. At tight end for the Cowboys, Blake Jarwin also found the end zone once for Dallas. They're a team putting up a lot of points, able to utilize their tight end. So 2 names to consider.
Yeah, I love it. Kenny Gainwell looks like, just flat out better than Miles Sanders. And, they're going to play a lot of high-powered offenses in the NFC this year. The Eagles will. And in those trailing game scripts, if Gainwell's going to get all that snap share, I mean, Miles Sanders, unfortunately, is like borderline unplayable. Based off of what we've seen the last couple of weeks, and Gainwell is almost, kind of like a Nyheim Hines type role where he may be bankable in a lot of these shootouts that we're going to see from the Eagles. And it is really encouraging, not to derail there from the waiver wire target. But part of what is encouraging is the fantasy production from the receiving part of that game, because one of our concerns with the Philly backfield and targeting any of those players was Jalen Hurts as a runner. So Gainwell actually being targeted by a running quarterback, which is a trend that we don't always see, is certainly favorable for the rest of his rookie season outlook.
Yeah, for sure. One other note: I know we're not talking about the Eagles right now, but it's become pretty apparent that Devonta Smith can cut it at the NFL, and that he is playing the role of the main target for the Eagles, which is pretty exciting, Curtis, to see. And one final thing, too, I want to mention, Sam Darnold is basically running for a touchdown like every time a person looks at the television screen. Actually ranks 5th right now among quarterbacks in points per game, and has like 1 million touchdowns. So I just wanted to mention that as well.
Yeah, only in 2021, Dave.
Sign up for WynnBET Sportsbook at WYNNBet.com today using promo code BlueWire to get up to $1,000 toward a risk-free sports bet. Offer subject to change. Terms and conditions at WynnBET.com. Must be 21 or older and present in the state where playthrough WynnBET is available. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700.